As the Jeff Keighley circus rolls into town, another gaming summer is upon us. It's a time of many showcases, all streaming all the time, loads of new games coming out, loads of new trailers, loads of release news on things we've been waiting for. So in this video I'm going to cover the first part of it, that's the Summer Game Fest kickoff presentation and all of the cool indie stuff from Day of the Devs. These are my picks, but let me know yours in the comments. Likes and subscribes are appreciated as always, and I will tell you about the channel's Patreon at the end. Summer Game Fest happened on the 7th of June at the YouTube Theatre in Los Angeles. Jeff Keighley took the stage as always, being his usual weird self, but this year's presentation started off with a little recognition of industry layoffs and some recognition for indie games too. But going from there straight into a LEGO Horizon game was about the least indie thing I can imagine. There was some crunching gears there. Something that I enjoyed about this one was watching Jeff waiting for the applause. Some things he knew would send the crowd wild, like introducing Sam Lake, some he wasn't so sure about, like the finals, and some were actually a fake out, like when he mentioned Batman Arkham, the crowd went wild, but then he said it was exclusive to Quest and they went immediately dead quiet. There was a bit of a Jeb Bush please clap energy to the whole thing this year, but there were also some really good indie games, so let's get into them. The first thing that caught my eye was Ken by the Game Bakers. It's our first Jusant-like, coincidentally by another French studio. They must really like climbing out there in France. This one looks like it's maybe a little bit harder. We saw the protagonist falling and swinging from their rope a lot and screaming all the time with frustration as they were trying to get up the cliff. But I'm very much here for more climbing games. No release date on this one, but I'll be watching the skies for more Ken. And one of the highlights of the show was Neva by Nomada, the makers of Grease and published by Devolver. We got a first taste of gameplay and what we saw was really impressive actually. There was some combat with a 3-hit combo. There was some cooperative moves with your wolf who will follow you around and help in combat and puzzling. We saw some boss fights with big black scary looking creatures, and the wolf companion is really interesting. It looks like you can maybe signal to it to go ahead and help in combat and then you come in and finish off enemies. The whole thing just looks and sounds absolutely gorgeous. No release date, but they reaffirmed that 2024 window, so we can expect to play Neva later this year. I was also happy to see Battlesuit Aces, the next game coming from Trinket Games and published by Outer Sloth. That's a brand new publisher from the makers of Among Us. And this team made Battle Chef Brigade, a game that I really liked, that's very underrated. I will leave a link here so you can go and check out my video about it if you want. It looks like they're moving on to a sci-fi card game. We got a glimpse of gameplay where you're playing cards with laser effects that will strike your enemies and some cutscenes and stuff like that. Looks like early days for this one, but I'll be looking out for it. That's Battlesuit Aces. One of the things that got teased beforehand was that Heart Machine, the developers of the Hyperlight universe and Solar Ash, are going to be working with Devolver. It turned out to be a game called Possessors, a stylish 2D action platformer. We saw some slashing enemies, some ground sliding past obstacles, and some grappling and falling to get from place to place. It honestly looked a little bit basic so far, but it's Heart Machine, so it had that signature aesthetic of futuristic sadness. I've really enjoyed all of Heart Machine's games, so I'll definitely be playing this one when it comes out. That's Processors. It was also really exciting to hear about Wonderstop, a game from Davey Redden, the developer of Stanley Parable and The Beginner's Guide, with help from Carla Zamonia, one of the creators of Gone Home. Davey Redden is all about subverting expectations and playing with genres, and here he's taking on the wholesome type games. It was an interesting trailer that mixed up growing tea and harvesting it, cleaning up and serving customers, but then we found out that the protagonist doesn't really want to be there and actually has some bubbling feelings and violent tendencies in their past. I think this story could go anywhere, and I really trust Davey Redden to deliver it. There's some dark psychology in this one. That's Wonderstop. We also got to hear about Project C for the first time, which was the most non-announcement game announcement I've ever seen. We didn't even get a proper name, we just got that Sam Barlow, the FMV auteur, is working with filmmaker Brandon Cronenberg, son of David Cronenberg, on a concept they described as twisted and heartbreaking. It's coming sometime in the future from the new publisher Blumhouse Games, and I guess the tease worked because I'm very curious to find out what it turns out to be. Next up was Day of the Devs, Double Fine's Indie Showcase Initiative, and it's such a crazy change of vibe from Jeff Keighley's slick corporate style to Double Fine's like cuddly goofing. I really love Day of the Devs. I think it has the best format of any showcase. We get to hear from all the developers and we get really clear pictures on what the games are. We always get to see gameplay and it's free for developers to take part, unlike Summer Game Fest, which apparently cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to take part in. So it was a really interesting indie selection. It started off with Simpler Times by Stone Skip. This is the opposite of Unpacking basically. It's like a packing game where you're packing up your childhood home. It seems to have some nostalgia and a really nice personal story, and it dropped on Steam immediately, so it's out now. We also got a first look at Koira from Studio Tolina. This is a really cute little game with an illustrated, inky, stylized look. You play as a humanoid creature who finds a trapped puppy and sets it free. They become your companion and you head out on an adventure together. No release date, but there's a demo coming this summer. That's Koira. There were a couple of really interesting looking ones that had unusual mechanics, like a Ranger, a role-playing puzzle game. It has a top-down perspective, but movement happens with a sliding tile system that changes the world around you, like Kato meets Zelda kind of. Really interesting idea. We also got another look at Screenbound by Crescent Moon Games. This is another high-concept game. This time it's a platformer, but as well as moving through first-person 3D space, you also have a Game Boy in front of you, and your movement affects both the world and the screen, so you're kind of dual-wielding platform games as you play. We also got a look at Psychroma by Rocket Adrift. This one's a pixel art cyberpunk game with an amnesiac protagonist, and seems to look at themes of memory, identity, and self, with future technology and some supernatural elements too. In an unexpected twist, it became Day of the Dad Jokes with the game Building Relationships. This is a weird physicsy dating sim where you play as a house who wants to meet other buildings. The developer described it as a short hike but stupid, which was enough to get me in the door. We also got a quite touching story about Afterlove EP. The writer behind the game, Mohammed Fahmy, died during production and the team are finishing it in his honour. It looks really cool. You're exploring Jakarta and record stores, eateries and the streets, playing a rhythm game, having dialogue, and it's published by fellow Traveller who are on a never-ending hot streak. You can try out the demo now on Steam. That's Afterlove EP. One of the nicest looking games in the whole show was Phoenix Springs by Caligram. It's been 7 years in development and you can see why from looking at it. It has an eye-popping hand-drawn style and 3D space too, and it's described as a modern point and click where you have to put words together to solve clues and get through gates and so forth. A bit concerned about the gameplay. Looks like it might end up being trial and error, but that visual style doesn't lie. Definitely curious about it. That's Phoenix Springs. The last game that caught my eye in this part of the showcase was Tides of Tomorrow from the developers of Road 96. I really liked the idea of that game. It was a cool branching paths game in which you were playing a refugee trying to cross a border to safety with wildly divergent stories along the way. This game takes that same idea and the same framework but puts it in a very different setting. It's a hedonistic gangster run place called Pleasureland. It's got Cyberpunk 2077 vibes because you can see ghosts moving around you as well. I'm very curious to make some choices in this game and see how consequential they are. That's Tides of Tomorrow. I'll finish off by rocketing through the Devolver showcase. It wasn't exactly a big one. They showed off a substantial Cult of the Lamb DLC, a game called Tenjetsu, which is a top-down pixel art fighter from one of the makers of Dead Cells. They showed a 3-part story DLC for Talos Principle 2, and we got a release date for the first-person kicker Angerfoot, which will come out on July 11th. They also did a lot of their usual comedy shtick, but after 3.5 hours of trailers, I think my attention was gone for that. So to wrap up with my top 5 games of the show, at number 5 it's Battlesuit Aces. I'm really curious to see what Trinket are doing next. At number 4 it's Cairn, very much here for another French climbing game. At number 3 it's Phoenix Springs. That art style is just fantastic, and my eyes were really drinking it in and thirsty for more. At number 2 is Wonderstop, the Davey Redden joint that looks like it's going to subvert the cozy genre. And at the top is Neva. It just looks absolutely spectacular and I can't wait to get my hands on it and feel what that gameplay is like. So that's it for the video. Hit like if you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments on the games that you think that I missed or games that caught your eye, and you can always subscribe to the channel for more like this. If you want to support the channel, please share this video with a friend, and you can also join the Patreon, which will give you an invitation to the Patreon-only Discord and loads of bonus content and behind-the-scenes stuff too. There's loads more showcases to come, so you'll be hearing more from me soon, but that's it for now. So take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you on the next one.